Right. So we just wanted to welcome you all to the School Support Network meeting of November 2022. In a little while, we'll be getting to know everyone and finding out whether this is your first SSN, your roles, and that sort of thing. But first, we just wanted to introduce both Trish and me. We are co-founders and co-directors of the School Culture Climate Initiative, which includes the school support networks. And we are based at the Center for Human and Social Development at St. Elizabeth University. Leanne? Out of the center, we offer a variety range of supports and resources for schools. And we've been doing this now for over 12 years, and we've worked with hundreds of schools throughout the state and farther afield. And for those of you who've been here before, you know, this is the school support network part of this, and part of our school support networks have expanded to coffee chats that we hold on different Wednesdays during the month. In addition, we have professional development and SEL coaching. We have a school climate assessment lab, as well as a very intensive 3-year school climate improvement process. We also do some workshop development series and things like that. So we really do try to support schools in the way that will make the biggest impact and has sustainability. So that's just a little bit about us. But very importantly, what the School Support Network is for is, oh, actually, before that, I forgot we had this slide in here. So go on, Leanne. Is that it's really important for us all. We're going to be spending about an hour and, probably 25 minutes now together, is to just to take a deep breath and just to settle in. And it'd be wonderful if you each could share a few words in the chat as to how you're feeling. This is my dog, Gus. As you can see, he has a range of emotions, just like all of us. But if you could share 2 words in the chat, and just how you're feeling today. Just take a deep breath and just think for a few minutes or a few seconds, and just share in the chat would be great. Energetic, productive, that's great. Overwhelmed. It's interesting, sometimes we see words combined, sort of energetic and overwhelmed, or anxious but hopeful. So it's interesting. Centered, calm, and focused. That is like a wonderful triad, isn't it? So in any case, it's just helpful for us all to get in touch with our feelings, because not only is it helpful about how we're feeling, but also how are other people feeling in the room. We all present in one way, but what's going on underneath can be a bit different. So it's always good SEL skills, a little self-awareness. So thank you. Okay, Leanne. Right, we just did that. So today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to find out who's in the room with us in just a little bit. And we're going to be doing, talking a little bit about the school support network. And then the main part of the time today will be really diving in deeply into what does integrated SEL in school climate work look like in a school when it's delivered within a framework. And the framework we're going to be discussing today is core values. And so, we're really excited to bring you this workshop. It's really important for any kind of intentional SEL school climate character work is to have a framework. So we'll be spending about a little over an hour, and there'll be chances for you to talk one another. It's going to be full of information, but at the same time interactive. And then we're going to be talking a little bit about just some resources within the state, as well as including funding resources and other resources. So we'll just be wrapping up with a few, kind of housekeeping things that should be of interest as well. Leanne? Right. So for those of you that are new to the School Support Network, and we'll be hearing from you in a minute, we have a little poll, is the whole idea is connection, shared professional development. We started the school support networks about 12 years ago. And since then, we've had a school support network meeting, I believe, about 9 to 10 months of every year since then, including during COVID, when in fact, COVID allowed us to expand our offerings to include what I mentioned, the coffee chats, which are more informal without the professional development piece. But one of the great things about the school support network is shared high quality professional development seems to be really valued by all of you. And one thing to keep in mind, we work really hard at the topics that we bring to you to make sure that they're appropriate for K through 12 and different roles within the school. So that way there's something usually of interest. And the idea is that there's always something you can bring back to your school, to your colleagues, that sort of thing. So let's go to the next slide. As I mentioned, our coffee chats, they are the school support network meetings are sort of topic based. You know, we always have a theme where we receive professional development. The coffee chats are monthly, and those are really just a facilitated conversation between those who attend. If you haven't joined a coffee chat, we really encourage you to. Those that do attend seem to find great value in them. And in addition to a general coffee chat where anyone in the school community can join in, so we have school counselors and building leadership, occasionally some teachers. We all, school counselors, school psychologists, that sort of thing. But we also have job-alike coffee chats for building leadership as well as for school counselors. And those are, focused on those particular roles, and they become a really lovely, supportive professional learning community. So really encourage you to keep an eye out in our mailings for those dates, and just please come on in. It's a light lift on your part, but hopefully you'll be able to get something out of it. And we just love being able to spend time with all of you. So now it would be great if everyone could complete the poll. It's so nice to know who else is around, who's in the room with us. And so Leanne, could you launch the poll?
Okay, so we have pretty even distribution going so far on level of school, which is really great to have that diversity. A lot of school counselors with us, some administrators, teacher or two. The horse race is still ongoing. And wow, only almost about 73% of people have been to school support network meetings before, and welcome to about 30% who are new. So let's see, almost there. A couple more people participating. Really nice distribution of elementary schools of both types, middle school, high school, district level. That's fantastic. Okay, we could end the poll and share the results.
Are you all seeing the results?
Yes?
Okay.
Okay. There we go. There you see all the school counselors and the distribution of who's been with us before. So thank you very much for completing that poll for us.
Great. So that's wonderful. And it should be mentioned for those of you that are new, the school support network meetings back in the day were in person. They were 3 hours long, and it was an opportunity for everyone to get to know one another, as well as share in professional development. And so, of course, with COVID, and we were actually active in 5 counties. So COVID brought with it so many challenges, but it also brought some opportunities, which is our opportunity to have gone virtual. So it's wonderful to have new people here, as well as those that remember the good old days when we were all in person. So because it is so important to know sort of who is in the room with you, we are going to be offering some breakout sessions during the rest of the PD today, so that you can get to know each other a little bit. So usually we do have a guest presenters with us. And however, today, we're just going to wait. I see that we're screen sharing and getting organized there. So today, Trish and I are going to be providing the professional development. And this particular workshop about SEL and school climate, delivered within a framework of core values, is one that we presented in Iowa this summer at the state conference in Iowa of school superintendents and New Jersey school boards earlier in October, and at NJEA last week. And what we found, and the feedback that we've gotten from talking to people, and also with our work that we do, with schools through the SCAPE process, is that there's so much activity going on in schools, and yet it isn't necessarily coordinated. And to really ensure the right sort of impact and sustainability, it's so important to have a framework. So we're really excited. We thought, well, you know what, we're doing this for all the other people. Why not so why not make this available to those who come to our own school support network meetings? So that's kind of the backstory to this workshop. So we're really excited to be able to provide this. So Leanne or Trish, could you share the screen?
That's us again.
So as mentioned, for those of you who may not know us, we both wear a number of different hats. Trish is, along with me, of course, the co-founder and co-director of the initiative. Trish also is the director of the Center for Human and Social Development at St. Elizabeth University, is co-director of the Online Academy for Social Emotional Learning in Schools with Dr. Maurice Elias from Rutgers, and is also a professor of psychology and dean of the College of Professional Studies at St. E's. We're both involved with SEL4NJ. I'm the president of SEL4NJ, which is a really great organization, which we'll be talking about at the end of our time together today. So it should be noted too that through our work with the School Culture and Climate Initiative is that we have worked with over 140 schools through our 3-year school climate improvement process, as well as, of course, offering school support network meetings, lab services, and professional development. We have a wonderful team of consultants, about 10 of them. A few of them are on the call today. And I think it should be noted that our consultants are incredibly experienced and bring so much to our learnings and our offerings. So with that said, that's just a little bit about us. So today, what are we doing today? Well, we have sort of a handful of objectives. The first is we always think it's important to provide some kind of a background, sort of framing out why is SEL and climate so important, as well as, but we're not going to be spending too much time on that because we really be wanting to talk about the framework and to provide some time for you all to talk together, but also the integration of and the relationship between SEL, school climate, DEI, character, trauma-informed practices. How do they interact with one another, and why is it so important to have a coordinated approach? Then, of course, kind of the key reason for this is a framework of core values, and then how you can apply this in your schools. And we want to make sure that there's time for you to talk, but also to ask us questions, because there is a lot in this presentation, and so many of these slides really warrant probably a whole sort of deeper dive. So please ask. We'll have some time at the end. Please feel free to ask questions. We're a relatively small group, so as we go along, put them in the chat. Totally fine if you have feelings or reactions to what's being shared. Please go ahead and share those in the chat as well. So we always feel it's so important to, back in the day, I used to say, get out of the weeds, but now I like to say wildflowers, but to keep that big picture in mind. And, one of the big pictures is, how do we create school environments that set kids up for success in school and life? And it's all kids, not just a couple of kids. How do we do that? How do we, because we're really talking about a systemic approach here. How do we create an environment that allows teachers to teach to their best, as well as the students to learn? And we love this quote from Frederick Douglass. It's about, he said this about, wrote this in a letter actually, about 165 years ago. It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken adults. And that rings true today. It rang true in 165 years ago, and it has for millennia. And one thing to keep in mind, that all of what we're talking about is true tier 1 prevention. SEL, school climate, all of that is trauma-informed practices, is how we prevent so many problems from happening, and taking resources and energy away from learning and teaching. So it's just helpful to keep this in mind all the time, is that's what we're really striving for. So what we'd like to do is offer you a chance now just to get to know each other a little bit. And if you could just share in your small groups why you're interested in this topic. And then if there could be somebody in each group that could just kind of record a few things and be prepared to share out when we come back, that would be great. And we might have one of our consultants or two pop into your meetings. That's fine. Maybe they could be the recorders. If there isn't anyone, that's fine. If you could just pick someone, that would be great. And we'll leave it to you about how to choose. We don't want to be too bossy about that. So maybe we could go into breakouts. And I think for just a couple of minutes, maybe 5 minutes or so would be great.
Back 5 seconds.
Oh, I should stop sharing.
No, we should share.
Yeah, but they can't.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Welcome back, everyone. I think we have, here comes group 1, 2, 3. Okay, would anyone like to share from their group any, kind of any feedback or kind of discussions that you had about why this is important and why you're interested in this topic?
Anne-Marie? You're muted, Anne-Marie. You're still muted.
How's that?
That's good.
I was in a group with Christine, she's a social worker who works in Elizabeth, and that seems to be her main focus is SEL programs, because the feeling in the school is that, academics will improve. Like we all know, if social emotional is addressed, in a school-wide environment. So Christine was the only, Delano got called away, so we didn't talk to him at all, and Elena was not in, so it was just the two of us.
Great. We got to know each other. That's great.
Yeah.
Someone else want to share?
I'm one of the ABSs at our school, and I help to oversee the school safety and climate committee team. So that was one of the reasons why I decided to come. I used to go to a lot of a lot of these meetings years ago, but I just decided to come back. And also we're applying for school of character. Well, we already did apply because they were due last week, but we're also going for school of character. So I thought that would also be helpful with that.
Wonderful.
Great.
Kathleen, you had your hand raised. Do you want to just share quickly?
Sure. My group was a combination of counselors, social worker, principals, and all involved in different, anti-bullying specialists, DEI, school safety. But everyone agreed that they just feel their focus, and it's very important to promote the positive school climate and create the feeling of safety, connection, and comfort for the students so that they can be vulnerable both academically and socially.
Right. Great. Okay, well, thank you all for sharing. And so we're going to move on to our to the rest of the presentation and conversation.
Of course, now it doesn't want to do anything. There we go. It's going the
Oh,
wrong
wrong
way.
way.
Oh my God. There.
Right. So we can move on. So we're basically going to be talking about how these all intersect, and Trish is going to be providing a little bit of background into SEL just very quickly. However, before we move into that, it's just so important to keep in mind social emotional skills in school climate. We all know that in New Jersey, every school is mandated to assess and address school climate as part of the HIB legislation. That's kind of the second part of the prevention part of that legislation. The first part, as we all know, is about compliance. So for the last 10 years plus, schools have, been focusing on school climate. However, social emotional skills, very an important aspect to creating, strong humans. The New Jersey Department of Education has adopted the Castle model. So there's a whole lot of talk and focus around SEL. But what's really important to keep in mind is that these are not two separate efforts. Rather, they're very interconnected. And it's really important to keep in mind that those social emotional skills are skills. And those skills of the students and staff are what create the positive climate. We all know the impact one person can have on the room, right? And those social emotional skills have a lot to do with that. And within a positive climate, which is created by the social emotional skills of those humans, is where those social emotional skills can continue to be practiced. And it's really important to note that working on social emotional skills is something that is never done. It's a we're all continuous improvement models. It's just like in tennis, you can practice and practice. Once you make the varsity team, you don't stop practicing, you practice even more. And it's the same thing with social emotional skills. It's something that is very important to be intentional about, and that all of us every day should be working on ourselves, as well as creating environments where others can practice those skills as well. And then likewise, diversity, equity, inclusion, and trauma-informed practices. The goal of diversity, equity, inclusion is to ensure that everyone feels respected, safe, and connected. And to have a trauma-informed practice is, if there's ever a time for every interaction to be trauma-informed, it's now. We all together, the entire world, every human has been through community trauma the last 2.5 years. And some, have had it so much more difficult than others. But regardless, we all have to be approaching each other all the time, knowing that we have all been through a very difficult time, and a trauma-informed practice is really warranted, which is a way to create an environment where we all feel safe and connected and respected. So it's really important to understand this relationship, is that they really can't be done separately. It's very hard to do DIY separate from SEL and school climate. So what we're going to be talking about today is how these can be linked together within a common framework. But before we do that, we're going to be talking just a little bit about those 5 Castle competencies, and that's a framework as well. So turning it over to Trish right now.
Yes, thanks, Liz. So hi, everybody. So as Liz suggested, we want to talk about how a framework can help to integrate all of these pieces, so that in schools, people are not working in silos on these very integrated and related and interrelated things like DEI and having a trauma-informed school, and of course, SEL and climate. So within a comprehensive framework, which we'll suggest can be core values, and we're not the first to suggest that, and we're really lucky to have Bill Trusheim here, who is a part of our team, and also the president of the organization in the state that actually runs the schools of character. So it would be great if you could put in the chat, if you are a school who is applying for a school of character, or a district of character, or thinking about it, that would be great. And I'm sure Bill would be really excited to see that. And his organization, NJASECD, has taken the lead really nationally in terms of running a state organization. So within within a comprehensive integrated framework that rests on core values, it is also helpful to have an SEL framework. And so we have adopted the CASEL framework, the Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning in Schools. I would guess that a lot of you have seen this wheel. Maybe many of you haven't seen the competencies displayed in this way. But the CASEL wheel describes this framework of 5 core skills and then sub-skills within each of those core skills of self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness. And as CASEL and others and we argue that the most effective way of addressing students' social emotional skills is in a comprehensive way, incorporating an intentional focus on developing these in the classroom, school-wide, and having connections with home and community as a focus. So having a framework, doesn't have to be this, but a framework for SEL work in schools gives you a common framework, common language, a pathway, a vision, and certainly specific goals that you want to work together to achieve. So within the comprehensive integrated framework we're going to be talking about, founded on core values, it's helpful to have an SEL framework as well. So this we always include, just because we always want to give a nod to the science behind the argument for incorporating social emotional skills building in schools for kids. The data is just really overwhelming, showing the gains that children get and the long-term benefits of gaining those skills in schools. And I would also just direct your attention to the 2 paragraphs on the bottom right. This slide is also from CASEL, by the way. But the benefits of incorporating SEL generalizes to different kinds of schools, contexts, et cetera. And all of the good stuff, academic performance, et cetera, goes up, and all of the bad goes down. So we always want to make sure that people understand that this is science-based and that there's general agreement. Parents are behind the skills that are here and do agree that they want their children to develop these skills. So having social emotional skills in the adults also and in teachers is important to remember. One of the simplest forms of learning is modeling. So the adults in schools are models of behavior that impact students' behavior. But beyond being a model of showing and demonstrating good social emotional skills like self-regulation and social awareness and good communication skills, and empathy, it turns out that teachers with high levels of social competence are better able to protect themselves from burnout and are more likely to stay in the classroom longer. And here are the whys, because those skills enable teachers to develop and manage nurturing relationships with their students, manage behavior better, serve as role models, as I just suggested, and can regulate their own emotions in what we know is a very stressful context for teachers and counselors and staff and administrators. So those social emotional skills also serve as the foundation for being able to create relationships, positive relationships, optimal for learning in the classroom, positive relationships between students and teachers, but also think about your relationships with colleagues as well. So what are the things that relationship qualities that we look for that are fundamental for those kinds of positive relationships? Being warm, being consistent, attuned, which means you can sense what's underneath the behavior of a colleague or a student and adjust your reaction to that behavior. Affirming, taking a strength-based approach, and built on mutual respect and trust. Just a quick nod to, just to suggest that there's kind of 4 different ways of incorporating SEL into the school, and all 4 of these could be also happening at the same time in a school. A lot of schools have adopted an SEL program, an evidence-based program, which is wonderful. And CASEL.org has a great resource table of evidence-based programs that they have vetted. But in addition, the SEL learning outcomes should be intentionally infused in the academic curriculum as well, because these are skills, and students having the opportunity to practice these skills is going to lead to better and faster learning. But also there's SEL pedagogy. There are particular teaching strategies that help to create a positive classroom climate. And school-wide SEL implementation is the sort of umbrella comprehensive support for teachers to be doing this, for adults to be focused on demonstrating and modeling these skills, and that it is definitely integrated in the policies and the practices school-wide. And that's where the core values framework will come in a bit. So we also want to point out that character.org, which is the parent organization of Bill's organization that I just mentioned, has done a crosswalk between character strengths and core values that is demonstrated here by their slide. So there are a set core of 4 character strengths that then connect to a list of sub-values. So moral and ethical, performance, intellectual, and civic values are unpacked here on this slide. So moral and ethical values include things like honesty and integrity, caring and compassion. Performance values include things like self-discipline and responsibility. Civic values, respect and fairness, volunteerism, contributing to the common good. Intellectual values of curiosity, intellectual autonomy, critical thinking. And you may be hearing that there's an overlap between these character strengths and core values and what we just talked about in terms of SEL skills. So as Liz suggested earlier, there really is an integration of character strengths, core values, and SEL skills that we can demonstrate so that this is not siloed, but in fact integrated. If you are working toward character development or incorporating character development programs in your schools and SEL, look to integrate those 2 initiatives, because as this character.org slide demonstrates, Arthur Schwartz, the president of character.org, has done that crosswalk. And you could see how the moral character, performance character, intellectual character, civic character values correspond to the SEL skills that we just talked about. So they are integrated. They're not 2 different things. And sometimes there's a character team, and then there's an SEL team, and then there's a climate team in a school, where this can all be at one table instead and in a coordinated way. So speaking of coordination and jumbling, back over to you, Liz.
Great, thanks, Trish. And one of the, in addition to all of this, is just this jumbled word salad of all of these words. And sometimes, it's, students, staff, to be consistent, it's just like hearing some terminology over and over again that's consistent. It can make a big difference, because what we don't want is a jumbled up schoolhouse. And so some of you may have seen this slide. This was put together by Maurice Elias many years ago. It's called the Jumbled Schoolhouse. And what we've seen, and what Maurice is showing in this slide as well, is that over the years, all sorts of programs, resources, great activities and initiatives go into a school, but very seldom things come out. And what ends up happening is things get jumbled up. And what happens is that the academics in the core, that they're impacted. And so the idea is to provide a framework that can coordinate all of these programs, resources, activities in a way that allows the academics to thrive. So this is what a schoolhouse can look like without a common framework. So if we go to the next slide, you can see a different schoolhouse. And this schoolhouse demonstrates a common framework. And at the top, social emotional character development provides the atmosphere, the environment, those skills, the social, emotional, and character development skills that can allow the rest to really thrive. And notice in the middle, those academic skills are front and center. So this is a coordinated schoolhouse. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at this in a slightly different way. But as you can see, is having a common framework really allows a school to live up to its potential and the potential of all of those humans, whether students in terms of learning and whether teachers in terms of teaching. So the next slide. So again, this is just an overview. I'm not quite sure why it's looking like this.
It's doubled up.
It's doubled up, which is fine. But it allows coherence and alignment. We're going to be talking about that in a little bit. What we want to do is to make sure that any impact, any effort you're having in your school is really allowed to take root and to flourish, and to, not be compromised. So what we're going to be doing is going to the next slide, which is another way of looking at the different components that allow a thriving school. So the first are the social emotional skills, which we've talked about. The second is a positive culture and climate. And a positive climate, as we know, is what does that environment feel like? Is it safe? Do people feel connected? Is it a place that's calm where learning and teaching can happen? And again, an organized and coordinated school, that's kind of what we've been talking about in that previous slide. And then of course, student and staff mental health. But let's take a little bit and think about that organized and coordinated school. Because as we've seen, when all sorts of resources and supports go into a school and are never, kind of just keep on staying, it's sort of like a closet, is that you get move into a new house, a brand new closet, you've gone through all of your stuff, you're only putting things into that closet that you need, everything goes in with great intention. If you don't continue to look at it, after a couple of years, it becomes jumbled up. You have things in there you don't need anymore. You have things that are broken that just need to be tweaked to be useful. You can't find what you need because it's kind of messy. So schoolhouses are sort of the same, and that it's really important to figure out, what do you have and what do you need? And that's why a data-driven approach to this is very important. Is that kind of data gathering can take doing a resource mapping of what you have going on in your school. It can be taking climate surveys, other kind of data collection of figuring out what you need, and then making decisions as to how you're going to organize and unjumble your schoolhouse. And then of course, ongoing professional development is key. And that's especially important for those of you that have evidence-based SEL programs, other evidence-based programs. They're great, but to really be the recipient of those wonderful evidence-based outcomes, you have to implement that program with 95% fidelity. It's very hard to do in a jumbled up schoolhouse. So it's very important to be very clear about what you want to achieve, who's going to be impacted, how you're going to ensure all of whatever training or supports are necessary for that evidence-based program to thrive. So next slide. So we're going to be, I'm going to turn it over to Trish, and she's going to be talking about a framework that can hold this all together.
So thanks, Liz. So the framework we want to suggest is that before any work progresses in terms of selecting a social emotional learning approach, in terms of starting on the path to become a school of character, starting an initiative to do character development in your school, that one of the basic activities or exercises that a school/district should embark on is developing a set of core values if you don't have them. And in a little bit, we're going to give people some time to talk about core values in breakout sessions. It used to be a while back, and I think, Bill, you might be able to give us the date, when schools were mandated to have core values for their school/district. And those core values had to actually be published on the school's website. But that eventually went away. But what a set of core values does for a community is exactly what core values does for a culture. So a culture is a community of people who have adopted a set of values. Now, sometimes those values are quite implicit. Other times the values are explicit. And in school improvement work, we want to get to a point where the values are not only explicit, but have been developed with a very inclusive and transparent process. So in every culture, whether the values are implicit or explicit, those values drive behavior and drive expectations for norms. So before embarking on a school improvement, climate improvement process, or a character development process, you really have to, as a community, define what you want to see when you walk into the building, when you see kids interacting with each other, when you see adults in the building interacting with each other, because the values appear, they're operationally defined or operationalized in behavior. So you want to adopt a set of values that connect to the behaviors you want everybody to demonstrate and see. So for example, if you have adopted a value of teamwork, and I walk into your school building, I should be able to see on the walls of the hallways, not just individual projects, but I should see the results of teamwork. If respect is one of the values that you've chosen as a community, and we walk into that school building, we should see respect demonstrated. And so unpacking these values into explicitly describing the kinds of behaviors that are expected is a second step for a school community. And of course, helps everyone in the community to truly understand what is expected of them. So having a set of core values is really the first step. But what we're going to talk about next are sort of three components of a framework that are also sort of integrated together. One is having a coordinating body. The second is the set of core values and how to get there. And then the third are some of the important key things in place for sustainability. So to have a coordinated initiative, you need to really have a coordinating body. So in the schools where we work, the coordinating body is the staff climate team, working in consonance with the student climate team. These two teams serve as the bodies that are going to be front and center. They're going to be the voice, they're going to be the image of this work. So they can coordinate all of the intersecting efforts that we've mentioned. They can ensure that they have looked at the program inventory of what's going on, so they can help unjumble the schoolhouse, and they can match what the needs are with resources and eliminate some of the programming that is either not being effective or no longer needed, but to keep visible the focus on this work and to communicate activities that are ongoing about this work. So it's really critical to have a coordinating body. If we're working district-wide, or if you are working district-wide, having a district level coordinating body is great. But every school community is different. So having a coordinating body within the school is the staff climate teams, student climate teams, or however else you want to structure those in your school. So I've talked a lot already about what core values are, and that the development of core values should really be inclusive, but it should also flow from the mission and vision of the district. They should align with your SEL approach and the common language that you're using, permeate all aspects of the school experience for all people. But then for sustainability, you want policy alignment as well. So if your core values are not aligned with your, for example, discipline policy or conduct policy, then the work is going to fall apart. It should be mentioned in your strategic plan that the core values are driving this initiative. And again, communication and stakeholder engagement throughout is going to sustain the process and keep this work front of mind. So just to summarize, forming a coordinating body, establishing core values or revisiting those, and then making sure there's alignment between policy, strategic plan, and your core values. Then embarking on the choices in terms of how you're going to go ahead and approach your SEL/character program. So we're going to ask you to talk with one another again, and we're going to stop talking to you. So there are some prompts here. This could take probably a full day, full staff meeting to answer, but we invite you to in small groups, share any ideas you have about what core values exist in your school. Remember, they can be implicit. So what do you think are the core values that underpin the behavior that you see? What seems to be important? What does that behavior show that seems to be important? And if you have time, talk about how the values align with the strategy and goals that your district has, or the strategic plan that your district or school has. And then maybe think about what you might take away from the conversations that you have with one another that you could bring back to your own school. So what do you think your values are? How do they align with other things that your school is saying about itself? And what might you bring back to your school? So we're going to ask you to talk with one another for maybe about 10 minutes or so. And then we'll bring you back, and please be prepared if you would like to share some insights that you have. So go ahead, Leanne.
And we're off.
Really good work. All right, welcome back, everyone. We're just going to share out and then move on to kind of like, how can this look? We're a brief just nod to how this can look in terms of a process in your school. So before we do that, would anyone like to share out some of the insights and kind of ideas you shared? Oh, people just froze. So Trish, can you, oh, I'm okay.
We're okay. Anybody have a core value that they identified for their school?
Oh, Anne Marie, we can't hear you.
Christine, why don't you go ahead and share from our group? I know your camera's not working, but share from our group what you're doing.
So we are a school of character. So our core values are integrity, respect, and responsibility. So I was saying that, throughout our building, you would definitely know that that's our core values. It's within all of our lessons, integrated within our lessons. Even I was saying, like, our behavioral concerns, if we're having a behavioral issue with a student, that's they have to fill out how they didn't meet their core values and what they would do the next time, like what core value they broke and how they would do it differently the next time. So I was saying, like, within our building, if you walked up, we have 1,000 children. If you walked up, I, without a doubt, know that they would say, if you said, what's your core values? They would say respect, responsibility, and integrity. Like, it's very much ingrained into the day.
Love it. That's great. And just how does that make the day today for you and the other staff in the school? Easier?
I think it's easier because, we just constantly bring it up. It's always addressed.
Right.
And
you have those common words, right?
Yeah. And they could define them. They know them. They know what it means.
Right.
They'll say, and they use the vocabulary, he did not respect my, the distance between us or something like that. They'll say things like that. They use the vocabulary too. So it's nice when it's very uniform. It's very clear what the expectations are. Yeah.
It's a framework. Bill, do you want to share what the discussion was?
Yeah, I just want to make a couple of comments. Number one, I've been to Christine's school quite a number of times over the years. It was the first Elizabeth school to do School of Character. And it's a marvelous place. So, what she's saying, is really, you walk through the door and you see it.
Great. That's fantastic.
It is a very wonderful school. And so I'm so glad Christine is here today.
So are we.
I'd like to simply add that, it's very interesting when you talk about some of these decisions about core values. What we talked about in our group was that the process of deciding on the core values is almost as important as the core values that get decided on.
Yes.
And that's mainly because most every school picks very similar core values. And the ones that have been mentioned already: respect, responsibility, integrity, kindness. Those kinds of qualities are qualities that, that all schools, should be and usually are working toward. And the interesting thing to me is that this has been so politicized over the last year, at least, maybe more. What parent wouldn't want those things for their kids?
Mhm.
So when you unpack it and you look at the specific pieces of the puzzle, those pieces are generally wanted by everybody. But when you package it and call it something, SEL or SECD or whatever, that has been so misrepresented that it's sad.
Right. But I'd like to underscore really quickly, because we're going to move on, what you said about the process, Bill, having people in conversation about what core values they want to choose and what they look like and why is the most critical part of that. And, engaging all stakeholders in that conversation and then saying, okay, people, we have to decide on 4 is really a great process. So we're going to go back to sharing just to show a process flow chart, and then we'll go into wrap up.
So what we're going to be showing you, Tricia's just pulling up the screen, is a process flow chart that we've taken from our school climate assessment and improvement process, which is our 3-year school climate sort of work that we do with schools. Marie Elias was the person who, decades plus developed this process that's subsequently been adopted by CASEL as best practice. The flow chart we've put together ourselves, and we thought this would just be an interesting demonstration of what might want to come first in your school. And the first is relationship building. This is something that, as external providers coming into a school is so critical, but it's also important within your own school and within your own colleagues. It's important that there's trust, that everyone feels safe, emotionally safe in those conversations. So it's really important to spend time building a foundation of trust and relationship building. And then when we work with the school, we do something called a SCISI 101, but that doesn't necessarily have to be, that's what we use because we're working with the school, but it could be making sure that everyone within the school community knows what a school climate is, understands the importance of core values, understands what the school is trying to achieve and where it's going and how it intends to get there. So it's very important to have a framework, a different type of framework, but it's important to share that out and not keep this work top secret. And then, as we talked about in the framework, building a team and creating a communication plan. How are you going to talk about this work of core values and school climate and SEL? But also the teams are important. Staff teams and student teams are absolutely integrated. One can't come up with some core values and tell the other group what it is. It needs to be a very inclusive process. It is the students are what make the school. Staff are what make the school. So they both need a voice and a structured way of sharing their voice and participating. And then we come along to visioning and core values. It's important to kind of sit back and think, what kind of school do you want to be? What sort of skills do you want your students to take with them when they leave your school? That sort of visioning is really worthwhile doing, as well as, as we've been talking about core values, having a core value conversation that involves students and staff, other members of the school community, if appropriate, but very much together, creating 3-4 core values that everyone can agree really fully demonstrates what that school is all about. And as both Bill and Trish mentioned, the process, the journey, of that can just reap so many additional rewards. It's almost as important as the core values, because as we've seen, a lot of schools have similar core values, but how you get there is absolutely foundational and important. And then from there, kind of an inventory, data gathering. Okay, now that you know what kind of school you want to be in the core values, what kind of school programs do you have in place? What kind of resources? What kind of committees? And the idea of doing this is to unjumble the schoolhouse, is to start that process. And along the way, thinking, well, how do our core values work? How are we demonstrating them in our staff meetings? How are we demonstrating them in our relationships with our parent community, in sports, within the classroom, in the hallways? Are we walking the talk and talking the walk in a way that, as Christine shared, it makes life easier if everyone knows. You don't have to invent the wheel with every kind of interaction. It's set there. So that kind of inventory is very important. We with schools offer a school culture and climate survey, which provides wonderful data points to begin the process of identifying strengths and opportunities and developing action plans. It is worth noting, and there are many school climate surveys out there. It's really important to choose one that disaggregates by key subgroups. And the Department of Ed is working on one. There's a pilot now. It should be more widely available within next academic year. However, that said, what's very important is
I
what
think Liz
comes
froze.
after the survey. So
However, when we work with schools, oh, you're back, Liz.
I'm back, sorry.
That's
And
okay.
then the development of action plans based on the data review of identifying strengths and opportunities. And then, of course, consistent professional development for those adults, just in any kind of SEL program, any kind of character ed program, any kind of effort. It has to start with the adults, and that professional development is key. And then, of course, that constant infusion of social emotional learning. But that kind of is a demonstration of how we, in our work with schools through the 3-year school climate assessment improvement process, integrate core values. But it's something that you can do even without us, this sort of general approach. And it does tend to be organized. It tends to move along. It tends to be clear about who's in charge and who's leading the effort, even though it is an all school sort of, every school member has to participate.
And
So
I would
with
just add that there's continuous data gathering, particularly assessing outcomes. So we do a post survey as well and collect data at the end of the 3-year process to show where improvements have been made and what opportunities may still exist.
Absolutely. So while we're changing PowerPoint, and Leanne, I think maybe you could start screen sharing the other one. Does anyone have any comments or questions based on what we've just been discussing? Feel free. We're a small group, so feel free just to unmute or put something in your in the chat. If anything occurs to you, please feel free to do that anyway. So why don't we have about 10 minutes left, which should be great. So the next slide is, we always want to make sure that we're providing you with information on grant funding opportunities that is available for a school climate related work. And as many of you may know, the Sustainable Jersey for Schools effort, they're the people of Green Team. Just what you may not be aware of is that there's 3 specific action items that are related to school climate and SEL. The first is inclusive environments where all can thrive. Another, school culture and climate needs assessment. And a third is integrated SEL. And those 3 are, it's amazing, more and more schools are applying to receive recognition for these actions. There's lots of very specific guidelines and information about how to achieve points for these actions. But what's really exciting is that there's funding available for schools who are undertaking these efforts. So Leanne, can you go to the next slide? And this is a grant opportunity that's been going now for 5 or 6 years. So every year there tends to be 2 grant windows. What's really great is that this isn't sort of a one-off grant that sort of turns up and never appears again. We can count on these continuing to come. regularly. There's grants for $2,000 a pop, and then also $10,000 occasionally. So if you are interested in undertaking this work, especially with the integrated SEL unit as well as the school climate assessment unit, there is funding available. So we really encourage you to take a look at New Jersey Sustainabilities for Schools, and even quite honestly, whether you apply for the culture and climate work or not, it's wonderful to have grant funded things. Lots of times school gardens are funded. Back, you remember the whole hoo-ha about water, the water filling things on the walls have been funded, but it's a really great resource for schools. The next slide. Just wanted to make clear too that the Secretary of Education has issued a letter a month or two ago that was very explicit about his support for social emotional learning and school climate. That is very good news because there's more and more federal funds that are being made available. There's some large grants that some LEAs and other organizations are trying, to secure. But SEL is very integrated, and it's just something to have to know within your school when you're applying for grants that happen to be federal and or state, that this is a priority for the feds. It's lovely to see. And that's just, we won't go through that, but that's just how he talks about that. So the next thing to keep in mind is SEL 4NJ. If you haven't joined SEL 4NJ, we really encourage you to do so. It's a wonderful statewide coalition that provides resources around SEL broadly defined, including a series of integrated briefs as to what does SEL look like when in the classroom, in the arts, in STEM courses, in physics, as well as some other briefs that talk about, parents and anti-bullying efforts and that sort of thing. So in addition to these briefs, SEL 4NJ offers occasionally opportunities for its members to connect. We advocate for SEL on the state level. We have about over 2,300 members. And what's neat is it includes schools as well as SEL providers, as well as associations and organizations. So it's for those that you are members, it's been a little quiet the last couple of months, but please know that SEL 4NJ probably isn't going to be very quiet for much longer. You'll be hearing lots more, including SEL Day, which is coming up in March. So starting in January, you'll be hearing a lot about that. So next slide, please. Again, these are some of the briefs. We can go on. And also a project of SEL 4NJ is a social emotional learning survey, and we'll be sending this out with the PowerPoint. But if any of you have some time, we would love your input, because we're focusing on ensuring that external resources and supports are implemented in the best way possible in schools. So it's a project that we're doing in partnership with Newark Trust for Education. And so we're looking for input. So we'll be sending out this slide separately, but we would love it if you could just take a few minutes and complete that. Going on to the next slide. Right, we'd love to talk to you about two really great supports and resources we have available. The first is a workshop series for educators. It's called Building Within, Cultivating Well-Being and Emotional Resilience in Educators. We have run this a couple of times as pilots, and the feedback we've gotten has been just so positive. Everything from where individuals shared the impact on them personally has been tremendous. That they shared it was an hour a month that they just felt gave them so much energy and calmness, and it fueled them for the next month. It's a series that meets once a month for about 5 months. And others' feedback has been is that they were able to take the ideas and the things that were discussed and share them with colleagues and implement them in their classroom immediately. So it's $149 per person for the whole series. And again, it's once a month. It's a very light lift on for those who are participating, but the impact seems to be really strong. We are starting this next month, December 14th. So we really encourage you to find out more. There's more details on our website. You may have seen emails from us promoting this. Happy to answer any questions. And the yeah, it's just if you think a couple of people from your school might be interested in participating in this as a group, contact us and we can see what we can do to accommodate that. We'd love to discuss possibilities with you. It's a wonderful way of just keeping things fueled over the course of the next couple of months when it starts to get a bit darker and a little dreary. So the other workshop series is really geared towards building and district leadership. And so often from our school culture and climate initiative or the school support network meetings, we've heard that, building leadership, it would just be so great if they really understand this. And we understand that building leadership is so busy, just so much on their plate that this again is a way to develop a framework and an ongoing plan in a network with others in the same roles from different schools. It's basically a foundations of a systemic approach to positive school climate. And so we're excited to be able to offer us this first time. So if you are an administrator, building or district, please consider signing up for this. And again, it starts January through March, a couple of sessions, but lots of tangible benefits from it. And likewise, if you feel your principal or other district staff might be interested, please pass that along as well. So upcoming dates, we are not having a school support network meeting in December because it's just such a complicated month for the calendar, but we are having our coffee chats and we really would encourage you, if you haven't kind of participated and want to join us. The next is for administrators. That's November 30th. And then in December, we're having two, a job alike school counselor coffee chat in December 14th and a coffee chat for everyone December 7th. And we do have some people too who, they double dip, which is great. So if you attend one, you do not have to feel you don't have to attend the others. So we invite you to do that. And then really, we're super excited that in January, we're going to be hosting our great friend, mentor, and colleague, Dr. Maurice Elias, who's going to be talking about sustainability of SEL related interventions. As many of you know, Dr. Elias is one of the great leaders and thinkers around social emotional learning and school climate globally in the world. And we're so fortunate that he is here in New Jersey at Rutgers and is also such a close colleague. So we're always thrilled to have Dr. Elias with us. And then we have some interesting workshops coming up in February and March, and we'll be sharing those just as soon as we pin down the actual title of the workshops. So with that said, we would, the School Culture and Climate Initiative offers a lot. Please contact us. We would love to work with you. And also it's worth noting is that we really tailor what we offer to schools to that particular school. So it's very much a partnership and we have a whole lot of wonderful people as well as wonderful resources and supports that can help you. And then we would just love you to share something in the chat you're looking forward to. We are coming up into the holiday season. And while you're doing that, we're going to go to the next slide, which is, as always, we want to hear from you. We want to hear what's going on in your schools, but most importantly, what topics would you like to receive that we should offer as professional development through the school support networks. So these are your meetings. So we would love it if you were able to complete our evaluation either now or later today. We know how life can get in the way, but we would love to receive your feedback. And we'll keep this up for now. So with that said, thank you for everyone for joining us today.
And a shout out to our team members who are here too. Emily, Kathleen, Bill. I don't think I